Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So it is Thursday. It's time for another market update, especially after I missed a video of a market update last week. Let's go ahead and take a look at what is going on in the market, what's happening with authorities, what's happening with English language proficiency, what's happening with spot rates and volumes, most importantly, and just try to figure out whether the market is getting better, getting worse, or staying pretty much the same. Ready? Let's go. Okay, so starting with the net change in carrier authorities, as you can see, as of last week, we lost a net of 429 carriers. Now, something to remember is that I remove any Canadian carriers or carriers that are based in Canada. But yeah, 429 carriers lost, which is the second biggest net decrease, I would say, since week 27. I think the biggest one was week 34, where we lost 443 carriers net. Now, partially, this could be because of how data is inputted into the FMCSA system and the fact that it was a holiday on Tuesday, I believe. All right, let's take a look at why this happened. Why is the net change so drastic? Well, as you can see, the total gained in the red is much lower than usual. All right, let's take a look at what's happening with that English language proficiency. As you can see, this is up to November 16th. It's kind of at the halfway mark from where we were in October as of November 16th. So what is happening exactly? Well, if we take a look, you can see that the violations and out of service orders went down from last week and the week before. But in terms of percentage, how many violations for English language proficiency result in an out of service order, it's at the highest point, 96.67%. And this is, of course, not including those border zone carriers, which are exempt from getting an out of service order for English language proficiency. They can still get a violation, but they don't usually get an out of service order. Okay, let's take a look at what's happening with diesel prices. And it seems like this is week 3 or week 4 where we are only seeing increases. As of right now, the average diesel rate is $3.77 per gallon. This is 2.4 cents higher than last week, 13.6 cents higher than last month, and almost 24 cents higher than last year. Okay, let's take a look at the maps last week versus this week. This is the price at the pump, and what you're looking at is last week. If we look at this week, you can see that most areas got a little bit darker. So the most expensive price at the pump, you're of course going to find in California, $5.16 per gallon on average. The second highest is Washington, $4.93 per gallon on average, and then Oregon. But if we remove IFTA from the calculation, this is last week, this is this week, as you can see, the most expensive becomes actually Washington, followed by Oregon. California is no longer the most expensive because the IFTA tax in California is absolutely insane. All right, now let's take a look at what is happening with those rates as of last week. This chart does not show what is happening this week. It's as of last week. Reefer rates went up quite significantly on average, $2.53 per mile. Flatbed rates went down to $2.28, and dry van rates are at $1.95, pretty much what we usually see. Okay, let's take a look at the overview. So in terms of dry vans, and this is again for those who are new to these market updates, this is not going to tell you the best areas to stick to. It's just kind of an overview for informational purposes. For dry vans, the highest recorded average rate per mile was from Maine, $4.51. The lowest was from New Hampshire, $1.09. Highest volume for dry vans is from Texas. The lowest is Rhode Island. And the most versatile state this week for dry vans is California. Versatile means that there is a higher amount of loads, and those loads pretty much go to every single region. Now for reefers. The highest rate per mile was from South Dakota, $3.53. The lowest from Delaware, $1.20. Texas had the highest volume, Rhode Island had the lowest volume, and the most versatile, just like with dry vans, was California. For flatbeds, the highest posted rate per mile was from Delaware, $6.38. Arizona had the lowest rate per mile, $1.29. Texas had the highest volume, Rhode Island had the lowest, and Texas was the most versatile state. So let's look at loads and trucks for the three equipment types. So these are the loads for reefers. As you can see, California, Texas, and Illinois have the most loads relative to the rest of the market. Trucks mostly go to, as usual, Texas, California, and Florida. What about the rate per mile map? Well, it looks a little bit darker than usual, and the most versatile state here, as we remember, was California. So let's take a look. California had an average rate per mile of $2.62 this week. The highest rate per mile was going to the plain states, states like Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, etc. The lowest rate per mile was going to the Northeast, $2.11. Now, if we take a look at the overview and compare to last week, 2 out of the 5 regions saw a decrease in the average rate per mile, the Midwest and Northeast. Everything else saw an increase, and the only region that saw a decrease in volume for reefers was the Northeast. So where is the best place to stick to? It usually doesn't change. I would say it's the Midwest because it has the highest volume and the highest average rate per mile. Okay, let's take a look at what's happening with dry vans. In terms of loads, most of them come from Texas, followed by California, Illinois, Ohio, and Georgia. Trucks, however, mostly go to Florida, Texas, and California. In terms of the rate per mile map, we also saw that for dry vans, the most versatile was California with an average rate of $2.18. Highest rate per mile goes from California to the West Coast, Arizona, Idaho, Nevada. The lowest rate per mile goes to the Midwest. So yeah, even though California is versatile, if you take a look at the average rates to the different regions, it's not that fantastic. And the average rate per mile in general is offset by the fact that to the West Coast, it pays on average $3.47. Now, for dry vans, 2 out of the 5 regions saw a decrease in the average rate per mile week over week, the South and the West, and 2 of the regions also saw a decrease in the volumes, the Midwest and Northeast. Where is the best place to be? For dry vans, it's also the Midwest because, again, highest rate per mile and highest load volume, which means that you have something to choose from, and the rates are usually a little bit better. What about those flatbeds? Loads mostly come from Texas, Alabama, and generally the South, although Washington and Oregon also have more loads than usual. Most trucks go to Texas, Florida, and California. Those are the 3 markets where all the loads go, it seems. The most versatile state was Texas, and the average rate per mile is $2.25. The lowest rates go to the West Coast, and the highest rates go to the plain states. So places like Texas to Texas, Texas to Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, and so on and so forth. Now, for flatbeds this week, also 2 out of the 5 regions saw a decrease in the rate per mile, the Midwest and the South, and 2 out of the 5 regions saw a decrease in the volume, the Midwest and the plain states. For flatbeds and open deck trailers in general, I would say that the South is still the best place to be simply because of the load volume, although you have to be careful. From the South, even though there are a lot of loads, a lot of them pay pretty decent relative to the rest of the market. You have to remember that usually the difficulty from the South is to get that weekend load, a longer load. So what usually happens is you'll get a really good rate per mile running short miles and a good gross too. So during the week, a good place to be. So as I mentioned in my short last week was very, very difficult. We were sitting pretty much half of the week. One of my trucks did not get a load for the weekend, even though he was in a relatively good area. It was just a difficult week. This week is a little bit better, but I can't say that there is any significant positive change in the market just yet. So I'm curious to hear how your week went and how last week went, because I feel like last week was really difficult, not just for me, but for a lot of people. And just would love to hear the comparison from last week to this week. Anyway, wishing you all a fantastic rest of your Thursday. Stay safe, stay healthy, and keep learning. See you in the next video.